Across 3 centuries, one family wielded more financial power than most nations, turning information into gold and wars into profit. From a cramped ghetto where they couldn't even own land, they rose to bankroll empires and literally changed the course of history. Here's what it was really like to build the world's most powerful banking dynasty. Quick thing before we start, if you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, let's head back to 1760s Frankfurt, Germany. Trust me, it's gonna be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously. Adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're gonna want to be cozy. Picture this, you're waking up in the Frankfurt Jewish ghetto. Not like your soft mattress right now, you're on a thin straw pallet that's seen better days, probably better years actually, and the first thing that hits you isn't the light creeping through the shutters, it's the smell. The alley outside your window is basically an open-air second-hand market mixed with a dumpster. Shops have spilled heaps of old clothes and soiled household goods into the narrow streets. The smell of unwashed wool, rotting vegetables, and too many people crammed into too little space. It's thick. You can taste it. Every morning starts like this. Your name is Meyer Amschel Rothschild, though nobody's calling you a banking titan yet. Right now, you're just another guy trying to make it in a system designed to keep you down. Frankfurt Jews can't own land, can't farm, can't work in handicrafts, can't even deal in the good stuff like weapons, silk, or fresh fruit. Those are all off limits, so you do what your family does. You trade textiles, and you hate it. Not the work itself, really. It's the profit margins. They're terrible. You're moving bales of fabric that weigh more than you do, dealing with merchants who look down on you, and at the end of the day, you've made maybe enough to keep the lights on and food on the table. Maybe. This isn't the path to wealth. This is the path to doing the same thing your whole life and dying in the same cramped ghetto where you were born. There has to be a better way. You know there is. You've seen the Christian merchants, the ones who can trade in luxury goods, the ones who have connections to the courts and the nobles. They're not smarter than you. They just have access, and access, you're starting to realize, is everything. So you pivot, you start dealing in gold coins and antiques. Now we're talking. The profit margins here, way better. A rare coin can fetch 10 times what you paid for it if you find the right buyer. An antique from the right period, even more. You've got an eye for this stuff. You can spot a fake from across the room. You know value when you see it. And here's the thing, when you're dealing in gold coins, you start meeting a different class of people, not the textile merchants haggling over pennies, real money, old money, noble money. One day, you catch a break that changes everything. You become a court agent for Prince William of Hesse Castle. Think of a court agent as basically an 18th century stockbroker, except instead of stocks you're dealing in gold coins, art and whatever else the rich folks want to buy. Prince William has money, stupid amounts of money, the kind of wealth that makes your head spin when you start calculating the numbers. Here's how it works. Prince William wants to buy some gold coins for his collection. He's not going to go down to the market himself. That's beneath him. So he tells you to go get them. You're his guy, his agent, his broker. And this is where you have a brilliant, slightly shady, absolutely genius idea. You take the prince's money, sure, but first you go to the market and buy the coins yourself using borrowed money. Then you turn around and sell those same coins to Prince William. You're acting as both the buyer and the seller, the middleman on both ends of the deal. This is called front-running, and it's about as legal as you'd expect, which is to say not very, but nobody's checking, nobody cares. The prince gets his coins, you get paid twice. First, you collect your 8% commission fee for being his agent. That's the legitimate money, the money everyone can see. But second, and this is the beautiful part, you make money on the spread. You bought the coins for one price, sold them to the prince for another. The difference? Pure profit. And the prince has no idea you're doing this because you're the one telling him what the market price is. You're making money coming and going on every single transaction. The commission alone would be nice, but the front running, that's where the real wealth is building. And you do this over and over, year after year. Every time Prince William wants gold coins or art or anything really, you're running the same play. Buy it first with borrowed money, sell it to him at a markup, collect your commission on top. You're profiting twice on every deal, and the money is piling up faster than you ever imagined back when you were hauling textile bales through the ghetto. By 1782, you're not just comfortable, you're rich, really rich, so rich that Prince William makes you his official investment manager. Think about that for a second. The Jewish guy from the ghetto who couldn't legally own land is now managing the investment portfolio of one of the wealthiest princes in Germany. The kid who was trading second-hand clothes in the smelly alley is now being trusted with millions. But here's the thing about you, Mayor. It's never enough. That's not greed talking. Well, maybe it is a little, but it's more than that. You're thinking long-term, generational. You don't just want to be rich. You want to create something that lasts, a legacy, a dynasty, the kind of family name that echoes through history. Being a trader, even a wildly successful one, has a ceiling. There's only so much you can do, only so much wealth you can accumulate. But banking is where the real power lives. Banks don't just make money, they create it, they move it, they control the flow of capital across cities, countries, continents. Banks finance wars and rebuild nations. Banks are how nobility becomes obsolete and money becomes the only nobility that matters. So you become a bank, not overnight. It's a process. You're building relationships, establishing credit, proving you can be trusted with other people's money. Slowly, methodically, you transform from mayor the coin dealer to mayor the banker. And by the close of the 1700s, you're the richest man in Frankfurt. But Frankfurt is still a ghetto. It's still Germany. It's still limited. You're the biggest fish in a very small pond, and you know it. You've hit the ceiling of what's possible here. To really build something permanent, something that survives you, you need to think bigger, way bigger. You've got 5 sons, 5 smart, ambitious, hungry sons who've watched you build this empire from nothing, and you've got a plan for them, a crazy, audacious, borderline insane plan that requires them to leave home and spread across Europe. You're going to send 4 of them to the great capital cities, Vienna, Naples, Paris, and the crown jewel, the center of the financial universe, London. One son stays with you in Frankfurt to maintain the home base, but the other 4, they're your ambassadors, your outposts, your network. Each one will establish their own banking house in their city, but they won't compete with each other. They'll work together, they'll share information, they'll move money between cities faster than anyone else can. They'll create a financial spiderweb across Europe with the Rothschild family sitting at the center of every strand. Your 3rd son, Nathan, is the one you're sending to London, and Nathan is special. He's got your business sense, but with an edge. He's fierce, ambitious, quick to take offense, and even quicker to strike back. Some people are going to love him. Most are going to hate him. You don't care. What matters is that he's capable, more than capable. He might even be better at this than you are. You give him £20,000. In today's money, that's serious capital, multiple millions. It's a fortune, but you expect him to turn it into 10 fortunes, and if anyone can do it, it's Nathan. London in the early 1800s is the centre of everything. Great Britain is a global superpower. The British Navy rules the seas. Nobody even comes close. The Industrial Revolution is transforming the economy. Britain is becoming the world's factory. Goods are being manufactured faster and cheaper than ever before. The financial sector, centred in London, is robust and growing. The Bank of England has been around since 1694, and London has become the beating heart of global finance. If you want to play in the big leagues, you go to London, and that's exactly where Nathan is headed. The pressure on Nathan is immense. He's not just representing himself, he's representing the family, the Rothschild name, your life's work, everything you've built. He can feel the weight of it. Every decision he makes, every deal he closes or fumbles, reflects on the family, on you, on the legacy you're trying to create. And Nathan does not do well with pressure from others, but pressure on himself? That's different. That drives him. That makes him dangerous. He arrives in London with his £20,000 and immediately starts looking for opportunities. The London textile industry is booming. Small workshops and factories are popping up everywhere, producing cotton, silk, wool, everything. There's money to be made here, but the competition is fierce. Everyone's trying to grab a piece. Nathan sees the game differently. Most merchants are focused on one part of the supply chain. You've got the guys who source raw materials, the guys who dye the fabrics, the guys who manufacture the finished goods. Everyone's specialized. Everyone's making one profit. Nathan wants 3 profits. He goes to the manufacturers with a proposal. He'll supply them with both the raw materials and the dye. They just handle the manufacturing and give him the finished goods. He's essentially vertical integration before that term even exists. He controls 3 steps of the process, which means he captures 3 separate profit margins. The manufacturers love it because it simplifies their lives. They don't have to source materials or dyes, they just manufacture. Nathan loves it because he's making money at every stage. He's buying raw materials cheap, selling them to manufacturers at a markup, buying dyes cheap, selling those at a markup, then buying the finished manufactured goods and selling those to retailers. 3 profits instead of 1. According to Nathan's own account, and yeah, he's probably exaggerating a bit because that's what successful people do, he turned that £20,000 into £60,000 in just a few years, triple his money. That's the kind of return that makes investors weep with joy. But Nathan's not satisfied with legitimate business alone. Why would he be? He learned from you. He knows the real money is in the grey areas, the places where rules are more like suggestions. He starts smuggling textiles, precious metals, anything that can be moved quietly and sold for profit. Smuggling in the early 1800s is risky but hugely profitable. The British government has tariffs and taxes on imports, especially during the Napoleonic Wars when they're trying to control trade with continental Europe. But if you can get goods past the customs officials, you can sell them for way more than they cost. Nathan develops a reputation. People know him as the guy who can get goods to the continent when nobody else can. Superior management, they call it. Good judgment, they say. Really, it's just being willing to take risks that other merchants won't, and having the connections to make those risks pay off. By 1808, Nathan's business in London is reporting sales of £800,000. That's massive. In just a few years, he's gone from a Frankfurt banker's son with £20,000 to a major player in London's financial scene. The money is rolling in, the reputation is building. He's ready for the next step. Time to become a bank. Just like his father, because trading textiles, even smuggling them, has a ceiling. Banking has no ceiling. The sky's not even the limit. The limit is how much wealth exists in the world, and in the early 1800s, that's growing every day. Nathan's plan is to build his bank bigger than his father's. He wants the London Rothschild Bank to be the flagship, the crown jewel, the one that all the others look to. And given that London is the financial capital of the world, it's not a crazy ambition. Back in Frankfurt, you're watching this unfold with pride. Your plan is working. Nathan's thriving in London. Your other sons are establishing themselves in their cities. The network is forming. The web is being woven. Everything you dreamed of is starting to become real. But you're getting old. Your health is deteriorating. You can feel it. The energy that used to carry you through 14-hour days is fading. Your body is reminding you that you're mortal, that time is running out, that everything you've built needs to survive without you. By 1812, you know the end is coming soon. You gather your sons and give them the most important lesson, the one that matters more than any business advice, more than any financial strategy. Family unity comes first, above all else, always. You've seen what happens to family businesses when the next generation fights over control. They splinter, they collapse, they disappear, the wealth gets divided and diluted until there's nothing left. You will not let that happen to the Rothschild name. Your sons need to work together, support each other, put the family above their individual ambitions. The banking houses in different cities can't compete. They have to cooperate, share information, move money between them seamlessly, act as one entity, even though they're separated by hundreds of miles. This is the foundation. This is what will make the Rothschild dynasty last. Not the money, not the banking skills, the family bond, the unbreakable commitment to each other. And your sons listen. They take it to heart. They promise, because they've seen what you've built from nothing. They know the value of what you're giving them. They understand the responsibility. You die knowing your legacy is in good hands. Your sons will honor your memory by honoring each other. The House of Rothschild will not just survive, it will thrive, it will grow, it will become something even greater than you imagined. And they're about to get the opportunity of a lifetime to prove it, because Europe is entering an age of wars, big ones, bloody ones, expensive ones, the kind of wars that bankrupt nations and create opportunities for those with capital and courage. The 18th century wars were limited. Professional armies fighting for limited objectives. When things got too expensive or too bloody, people sat down and negotiated, made peace, redrew some borders and went home. The 19th century wars are different. They're ideological, they're total. They're the kind of conflicts that don't end in negotiation. They end when one side can't fight anymore. And fighting costs money, lots and lots of money. Nations need to finance these wars. They need gold, weapons, supplies, and credit, and the Rothschild banking houses, now spread across Europe's major cities, are perfectly positioned to provide all of it. For a price, obviously, a very good price. By 1814, Britain has been at war with Napoleon for what feels like forever. The Duke of Wellington is winning battle after battle, pushing Napoleon's forces back toward France. This is it, the big push, the one that could end the war. Wellington plans to take the fight directly to French soil. There's just one problem, a big, expensive, logistical nightmare of a problem. Wellington needs French coins, not British pounds. French coins, lots of them. See, when you're running a military campaign in enemy territory, you can't just show up and expect people to accept your money. The French aren't taking British pounds. Why would they? They're at war with Britain. You need local currency to buy supplies, pay informants, keep the army moving. Without French coins, Wellington's invasion is dead in the water. The British government is freaking out. Wellington's campaign is already stretching them thin financially. They've been at war for years. The Treasury is feeling it, and now they need to somehow acquire massive amounts of French currency during a war with France. It's like asking for ice in the desert. Technically possible, but good luck. Nathan Rothschild hears about this problem and sees dollar signs, or pound signs technically. This is the opportunity he's been waiting for, the kind of deal that doesn't just make you rich, it makes you legendary. It establishes you as the guy who saved Britain's war effort, the banker who delivered when governments couldn't. But there's a catch. Actually, there are several catches. First, you need to acquire huge amounts of gold. Then you need to convert that gold into French coins. Then you need to somehow transport those coins through a war zone to Wellington's army in France. Oh, and you need to do all of this faster than the British government can figure out an alternative solution, because if they find another way, your opportunity evaporates. Most people would look at this situation and say it's impossible. Too many moving parts, too much risk, too complicated. Nathan looks at it and thinks, I got this. Here's what Nathan does. The East India Company, which is basically running half of Asia for Britain at this point, has £800,000 worth of gold sitting around. They want to sell it. Nathan shows up at the sale and buys all of it. Every single ounce, the entire lot. He just drops the cash and walks away with enough gold to sink a ship. Multiple ships, actually. Now he's got the gold. But that's just step one. He needs to convert this into French coins and get it to Wellington. The British government is panicking because they have no idea how to move this amount of currency through a war zone. You can't just load it onto a ship and hope for the best. The French Navy might intercept it. Pirates might grab it. It could sink in a storm. There are so many ways this could go wrong. Nathan tells them he'll handle everything. The acquisition, the conversion, the transportation, the whole operation. He's got the connections. He's got the smuggling routes he's been building for years. He's got people in France who can move goods quietly. This is exactly the kind of grey area business he's been perfecting. The British government doesn't really have a choice. They need this done, and they need it done now. So they agree. Nathan gets to work. He moves the gold across Europe using his network. Remember those banking houses his father set up in different cities? Vienna, Naples, Paris, Frankfurt, London. They're all connected. They all work together. Nathan can move money through this network faster than anyone else, because he's not dealing with random banks who don't trust each other. He's dealing with his brothers, his family, people he knows will deliver. The gold gets converted to French coins. The coins get smuggled into France through routes Nathan's people have been using for years, and it all arrives exactly where Wellington needs it, exactly when he needs it. The campaign moves forward. Wellington pushes into France. The war effort doesn't collapse due to lack of funds. Nathan later describes this as the best business I ever did, and he's not exaggerating. This deal establishes the Rothschild name at the highest levels of British power. The government now knows that when they have an impossible financial problem, the Rothschilds can solve it. That's worth more than the profit from this one deal. That's access, that's influence, that's power. And the profit isn't bad either. The commission alone is huge, but Nathan also makes money on the currency conversion, on the transportation, on managing the whole operation. He's getting paid at every step, just like he learned from his father. Europe, by the mid-1800s, has turned into a war zone. Countries are fighting constantly, and every war needs money. Starting a war, you need money. Losing a war, you usually have to pay the winner. The foreign exchange market becomes critical because nations need to move money across borders, convert currencies, finance operations in enemy territory. For the Rothschild banking houses, this is a gold mine, literally. They've got banks in all the major cities. They can facilitate currency exchanges between countries that are actively at war with each other. They charge high fees, sometimes as much as 8%, because they're providing a service nobody else can match. They've got the network, they've got the trust, they've got the speed. But the commission fees are honestly just a small part of their income. The real money, the absolutely insane money, comes from currency speculation, and this is where the Rothschild information network becomes a weapon. Think about how news travelled in the 1800s. slowly, by horse, by ship, by messenger, on foot. If something happened in Paris, it might take days or even weeks for London to hear about it. And in that time gap, in that information delay, fortunes could be made or lost. The Rothschilds understand that in finance, information is everything and speed is king. So they build the fastest private communication network in Europe. They use private carriers. They use well-trained horses that can ride day and night. They even use carrier pigeons for urgent messages. Pigeons are way faster than horses for short distances, and the Rothschilds breed and train them specifically for financial intelligence. Here's how this works. Let's say there's a major battle. Napoleon wins, or Wellington wins, or somebody important dies, or a government collapses. Whatever the news is, it moves through normal channels slowly. But the Rothschild network hears about it first. Sometimes hours ahead of everyone else, sometimes a full day ahead. And in that window, before the market reacts, before anyone else knows what happened, they can buy or sell currencies. If they know France is about to win a major battle, they buy French bonds before the price goes up. If they know Britain just suffered a defeat, they sell British currency before it drops. They're always one step ahead, always trading on information nobody else has yet. This is insider trading before insider trading even has a name. It's legal because there are basically no financial regulations. It's just smart business. Ruthless, maybe. Unfair, definitely. But legal and wildly profitable. The profits from currency speculation absolutely dwarf everything else. The commission fees are nice, the loan interest is solid, but speculation, that's where the real wealth gets built. Nathan's making more money in a single day of trading than most people see in their entire lives. The London house's profits keep rolling in, year after year, deal after deal. Nathan's reputation grows. He's no longer just the son of a Frankfurt banker. He's not even just a successful London merchant. He's the banker, the guy kings and governments come to when they need money. The man who can move markets with a single decision. Nathan becomes the richest man in the world. Not in London, not in Britain. In the world. The wealth is almost incomprehensible. He's got more money than some countries have in their entire treasuries. And he's still in his 50s, still young enough to enjoy it, still hungry enough to want more. But even the richest man in the world can't defeat the one enemy that eventually comes for everyone. July 28th. 1836. Nathan Rothschild wakes up feeling wrong. Something's off. He's been feeling sick for a while, but this is different. Worse. His body is shutting down and he knows it. The doctors are called, but there's not much they can do. Medicine in 1836 is basically guesswork mixed with prayer. Nathan dies at age 58, which is weird because the Rothschild family is known for living long lives. His mother is still alive and she's going to live past 90, but Nathan's gone, the richest man in the world, dead before 60. The London Times actually gets emotional about it, which for a British newspaper is like seeing a unicorn. They write that Nathan's death is one of the most important events for the city and perhaps for Europe in a long time. No operations comparable to his have existed in Europe to this time. Think about that. A banker dies and it's treated like a head of state passing. That's the level of influence Nathan had built. He wasn't just rich, he was a force of nature. His decisions moved markets. His loans could win or lose wars. His death is genuinely a big deal for the entire European economy. The markets react immediately. British bonds fluctuate, currency traders panic. Everyone's asking the same question. What happens to the House of Rothschild now? Is this the end? Will the brothers fight over control? Will the whole empire collapse without Nathan holding it together? But here's the thing, Mayor Amschel's last lesson to his sons, that family unity above all else, They took it seriously. Nathan might be gone, but the system he helped build doesn't need one man. The banking houses are set up to work together. The network still functions. The information still flows. The money still moves. Nathan's younger brother James, running the Paris bank, steps up as the de facto leader, and James is not intimidated by following Nathan. If anything, he sees it as his chance to prove he's just as capable, maybe more capable. James is different from Nathan. He had better schooling. He's more refined, more comfortable in aristocratic circles. Nathan was the scrappy fighter who built the London Empire through sheer force of will. James is the strategic thinker who can play the long game. Where Nathan saw opportunities and grabbed them, James sees trends and positions himself ahead of them. But taking over as head of the family during this moment, with Nathan's death still fresh, the pressure is massive. The banking world is watching, competitors are circling, everyone wants to know if the Rothschilds can maintain their dominance, or if Nathan was the secret source and now it's over. James looks at the situation and realizes something. Government bonds and war financing are still profitable, sure, but the market is getting saturated. More banks are getting into the game. The competition is eating away at profit margins. The deals that made Nathan's fortune aren't as lucrative anymore because everyone's doing them now. James needs a new edge, a new industry, something the Rothschilds can dominate before everyone else catches on. He needs to think bigger than just financing wars. Wars end, industries last forever. He looks at what's happening across Europe and sees the future rolling toward him on iron rails, railroads. They're expanding fast. England built the Stockton-Darlington line in 1825, and suddenly everyone realizes this is going to change everything. Transportation, trade, industrial growth. Railroads are connecting cities that used to be days apart. They're making goods cheaper to move. They're opening up markets that were previously too remote to reach. This is it. This is the next big thing, and James wants the Rothschilds to own as much of it as possible. Throughout the 1840s, the Rothschild banks provide financing for railroad ventures across Europe. They're not just lending money, they're taking equity positions, they're getting involved in the construction, they're trading railroad stocks and bonds. Every time a new line gets built, the Rothschilds are making money from the financing, from the trading, from the increased value of their holdings. And James is clever about risk management. He uses other people's money whenever possible. He creates syndicates, basically groups of investors who pool their capital for big projects. The Rothschilds put in some money, but most of the risk is spread across the syndicate. If the project succeeds, the Rothschilds make huge returns on relatively small investments. If it fails, they're not wiped out. This is sophisticated financial engineering. Most bankers are still doing straightforward lending. James is creating complex financial structures that maximize profit while minimizing risk. He's thinking 3 moves ahead. The railroad boom makes the Rothschilds even richer. The wealth keeps compounding. But here's something you need to understand about this period. While the Rothschilds and other banking families are accumulating unbelievable fortunes, regular people are struggling. The income gap between rich and poor is massive. The industrialists are making money as fast as possible by any means necessary, and worker conditions are brutal. 16-hour days in factories, child labor, poverty wages, no safety regulations. The average person looks at families like the Rothschilds and sees the face of everything wrong with the system. The bankers are financing the governments and the industries that are grinding workers into dust. The resentment is building, and it's about to explode. By the late 1840s, France is a powder keg. The government is deep in debt from losing wars. The economy is on the edge. The French people are angry at the government and angry at the financiers who keep the government afloat. They're looking for someone to blame, and wealthy Jewish bankers make an easy target. Within days, revolution breaks out. The French banking system nearly collapses, and the Rothschild Bank in France is right in the crosshairs. James is watching his life's work, his family's legacy, everything his father built, teeter on the edge of complete destruction. Angry mobs could storm the bank. The government could seize assets. Everything could disappear overnight. James needs help. Fast. He turns to his nephew in London, Lionel, Nathan's son, the next generation of Rothschilds, and this is the moment where family unity either saves them or they learn that lesson was just pretty words. Lionel looks at the situation. Bailing out the Paris bank is risky, really risky. If France collapses completely, the London bank could lose massive amounts of money. It would be safer to cut losses and let Paris handle its own problems. That's what any rational banker would do. But Lionel remembers his grandfather's words. Family unity above all else. The Rothschild banks don't compete. They don't abandon each other. They work together or they fail together. That's the deal. That's the foundation everything is built on. Lionel arranges a loan. A big one. Enough to stabilise the Paris bank and keep it from going under. It's his money, his bank's reserves, his risk. But he does it anyway, because that's what family means. That's what being a Rothschild means. The Paris bank survives. The revolution eventually calms down. The Rothschild name takes a hit, but they're still standing, still operating, still powerful. The family bond held when it mattered most. Lionel doesn't stop at just saving his uncle's bank. He's got bigger plans. Way bigger. He starts thinking about something that seems impossible for a Jewish banker in the mid-1800s. He wants to enter government. Not as an advisor behind the scenes, not as a financier who whispers in politicians' ears. He wants an actual seat in Parliament. He wants to be in the room where decisions get made. And this is wild because no Jew has ever held a seat in the British House of Commons. Ever. The system isn't designed to let people like him in. But Lionel's logic is simple. If he wants to help eliminate prejudice against his people, the best way to do it is from inside the power structure. You can't change a system by staying outside it. You have to get in there and break it open from within. Plus, he's got money. Lots of money, and in politics, money talks louder than anything else. Lionel starts buying up newspapers and funding media campaigns. He's basically running a modern political operation, except it's 1847, and nobody's really doing this yet. He's buying influence, shaping public opinion, getting his name out there. By this point, most of the legal restrictions on British Jews have been lifted. It's not like it was when his grandfather was stuck in the Frankfurt ghetto. Things have changed. Progress has happened. The Commons even passed a bill saying a Jewish person could hold a seat. So technically, legally, Lionel can run for office. In August 1847, he mounts the hustings as a Liberal candidate for the City of London. That's a big deal. The City of London is the financial district. It's the heart of British commerce. If you're going to represent anyone, these are the people who matter for a banker. And Lionel wins. He actually wins the election. People vote for him. The Jewish banker from the Rothschild family just got elected to Parliament. Except there's a problem. A big, stupid, bureaucratic problem that's about to turn this victory into a years-long fight. To officially take his seat, Lionel has to swear an oath. Standard procedure. everyone does it, but the oath requires you to swear on the Holy Scriptures, meaning the New Testament, the Christian Bible. And Lionel looks at this requirement and basically says, yeah, no, not happening. He's Jewish. He's not swearing on Christian scripture. It violates everything he believes. He tells them he'll swear on the Old Testament, the Torah. That's his holy book. That's what matters to him. Take it or leave it. The Commons freaks out. This has never happened before. Nobody's ever challenged the oath. The whole system is built on Christian assumptions. The idea that someone might want to swear on different scripture just never occurred to anyone. What do we do? Can we even allow this? Is this legal? The debates go on for years. Literally years. But Lionel doesn't back down. He keeps showing up, keeps making his case, keeps pushing, and eventually, finally, after way too long, they cave. They change the rules. Lionel gets to swear on the Old Testament and take his seat in Parliament. This is monumental for the House of Rothschild. They're not just bankers anymore. They're not just rich. They're in government. They've got political power to go with their financial power. That's a combination that makes them nearly untouchable. As James gets older in Paris, Lionel gradually takes over as the family's patriarch. He's the one everyone looks to for decisions. He's the one coordinating between the banking houses. He's running the show, and he thinks the Rothschilds are invincible. They've survived revolutions. They've grown richer through wars. They've broken into politics. What could possibly challenge them now? What he doesn't see coming is a rival, a new banking empire rising in the background, one that's studying everything the Rothschilds do and learning from it, one that's about to make a move so bold it'll shock everyone. Meet Junius Morgan, American banker working for a British merchant banking firm called George Peabody and Company. When Peabody retires in 1864, Junius takes over the whole operation, and Junius is smart, really smart. He's got that serious, business-like presence that old financiers love. He's calm, controlled, never shows emotion. The kind of guy who makes you trust him with your money just by looking at him. Junius understands that to play with the big boys, to compete with families like the Rothschilds, he needs to get into government financing. And in the 1860s, nothing creates more financing opportunities than wars. So he starts watching Europe, waiting for the right conflict, the right opportunity, the one that everyone else will pass on because it looks too risky. And in 1867, he sees the tension building. France wants to buy Luxembourg from the Netherlands. Seems straightforward enough, but Prussia, the rising German power, says absolutely not. They oppose the move. Prussia is led by Otto von Bismarck, and Bismarck is not someone you want to mess with. Bismarck's whole thing is creating a unified German empire under Prussian leadership. He's a wild man with a brilliant mind. Picture someone who gets into drunken brawls and fencing duels to prove his manliness, but who also has the strategic genius to manipulate all of Europe into doing what he wants. He's been described as a raging bull, dangerous, unpredictable, smart enough to be terrifying. The tension keeps building. France and Prussia are headed for war. Everyone can see it coming. And on July 19th, 1870, Napoleon III makes it official. France declares war on Prussia, which is exactly what Bismarck wanted. He's been manoeuvring for this. A war will let him unify the German states under Prussia's banner. It's all going according to his plan. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Rothschilds have been financing wars for like a century at this point. They're the go-to bankers for governments that need money for military campaigns. France should be an obvious client. They need loans, they need weapons, they need financing for the whole war effort. But the Rothschilds take one look at this situation and say, no, they won't lend to France, not a single franc. And the reason is simple. They've seen enough wars to know who's going to win. They can read the situation. France is walking into a meat grinder. Bismarck is smarter, Prussia is stronger, the German military is better organized. France is going to lose badly. And the Rothschilds don't finance losing sides. That's just throwing money away. Other major banking houses, like Baring Brothers, also pass. Nobody wants to touch this loan. It's too risky. France is going to get crushed and then they won't be able to pay back the money. Basic risk assessment, smart banking, protect your capital. Junius Morgan looks at this exact same situation and sees something completely different. He's asking a different question. Not can France win, but can France pay back a loan? And here's his calculation. Yeah, France is probably going to lose. The military situation looks bad. Bismarck is going to roll right over them. But here's the thing about France. The economy is diversified. They've got agriculture, manufacturing, trade. They've got a solid tax collection system. They've got national wealth beyond just their military. Even if France loses the war, even if it's a total disaster, they'll still be able to collect taxes. They'll still have an economy. They'll still be able to repay debts. It might take longer. They might need to raise taxes, but they can pay. That's what matters. That's the bet. Through his syndicate, Junius raises over £10 million for the French army. That's a massive loan, and he does something else that's crucial. As an American banker, he gives France access to American weapons. The French can buy guns, ammunition, supplies from America and ship them over. This is huge because Britain and Prussia are allied, so France can't easily buy British weapons. American suppliers are their best option. The war kicks off and it goes exactly how the Rothschilds predicted. Germany wins decisively, completely. It's not even close. The war ends with the Treaty of Frankfurt in 1871. France loses territory. Germany gets Alsace-Lorraine. The German Empire gets proclaimed at the Palace of Versailles, which is basically the ultimate power move. We just beat you so bad we're declaring our empire in your palace. At Versailles, in the Hall of Mirrors, maximum humiliation. France is defeated, occupied, and forced to pay massive reparations to Germany. It's a disaster. Everyone who passed on lending to France is feeling pretty smart right now. They avoided a terrible investment. Good call, right? Except France doesn't default on Junius Morgan's loan. That's the crazy part. Bismarck predicted they would. Most people assumed they would. How's a defeated nation going to pay back millions of pounds when they're also paying reparations to Germany? It should be impossible. But Morgan called it right. France raises taxes, they sell some assets, they squeeze their economy, and in 1873, just 2 years after losing the war, they prepay the bonds. They pay back the entire loan early, with interest. Junius Morgan walks away with £1.5 million in profit. From a deal everyone else thought was insane, from a loan that all the smart money passed on. He made a fortune by seeing what the Rothschilds missed, by asking the right question instead of the obvious question. This changes everything. The House of Morgan is now a major player in international finance. They're competing with the Rothschilds. They're taking deals the Rothschilds won't touch and making them pay off. Word spreads fast in banking circles. Morgan isn't just some American upstart. He's legitimate. He's got capital, connections, and most dangerous of all, he's got guts. The balance of power is shifting. For decades, if you needed major financing, you went to the Rothschilds. Now there's another option. Now there's competition. And competition means the Rothschilds can't charge whatever they want anymore, can't pick and choose deals as easily, can't assume they'll always be the first call. While Junius is building his empire, the Rothschilds are dealing with their own transition. James Rothschild dies in 1868. He held the family together after Nathan's death. He pushed them into railroads and kept them dominant. Now he's gone too. And the younger generations, the grandchildren of Mayer Amschel, they're different. They're not as unified, not as hungry. They grew up rich. They didn't build this empire from nothing. They inherited it. And that changes your relationship with money, changes your drive. Some of them are more interested in art and culture than banking. Some want to invest in exotic ventures rather than stick to traditional finance. The tight family bond that Mayer Amschel insisted on is starting to fray. Not breaking, but loosening. The banking houses are becoming more independent, more focused on their individual markets than on the collective family strategy. The Rothschilds start looking beyond Europe. They need new opportunities, new markets. They invest heavily overseas. A big chunk of their portfolio goes to Egypt, financing infrastructure projects. They put money into Indian railroads. These are huge investments in growing markets. The kind of moves that could pay off massively if they work out. But these investments are also risky. You're dealing with governments that are less stable, projects that are harder to oversee from Europe, currency fluctuations, political instability, colonial powers shifting. There are a lot of variables, a lot of ways things can go wrong. What the Rothschilds really need, what could get them back to their past dominance, is a bigger marketplace, a place with more money moving around than anywhere they currently operate, a new financial centre that's emerging to rival or even surpass London. And across the Atlantic, exactly that kind of place is taking shape. America is growing fast, really fast. From the 1850s to the 1870s, the country is exploding. The Industrial Revolution hits America like a freight train. Westward expansion opens up massive territories. The Transcontinental Railroad gets completed in 1869, connecting the East Coast to the West Coast. Suddenly, you can move goods and people across the entire continent. Industrialists are emerging who make the European nobility look poor. Cornelius Vanderbilt dominates railroads. Andrew Carnegie is building a steel empire. John D. Rockefeller creates Standard Oil and basically monopolizes the entire petroleum industry. These guys are creating fortunes that would make even the Rothschilds pause. The American economy is becoming the biggest in the world. New organizational structures, new ways of doing business, new industries. It's chaotic and wild and full of opportunity. And the Rothschilds, who've been dismissing America as a land of madmen for years, are starting to realize they missed something big. They see the House of Morgan succeeding. They see Wall Street emerging as a financial centre that could rival London. They realise America is where the action is moving, where the next century of wealth will be built. They need to get in. They need to find opportunities. They need to make up for lost time. And the perfect opportunity is about to present itself, not in a boom, but in a crash, not in success, but in disaster, because that's when the biggest opportunities appear, when there's blood in the streets, as the saying goes. When everyone else is panicking and selling, that's when smart money buys. For America, that day arrives on May 9th, 1893, and it's going to be bad. Really, really bad. The railroad boom in America had been going strong for decades. Everyone wanted in. Investors were throwing money at railroad companies like they were handing out candy. New lines were being built everywhere, connecting cities that didn't need connecting, running parallel to existing routes, just building for the sake of building. It was a bubble. Everyone could see it was a bubble, but nobody wanted to admit it because everyone was making too much money, until suddenly they weren't. May 9th, 1893, the whole thing collapses. Not slowly, not gradually, just boom, gone. Railroad companies start going bankrupt, one after another, like dominoes falling. The entire industry, which had been the backbone of American growth, just implodes. Banks that lent money to railroads suddenly have worthless paper. Investors who bought railroad stocks watch their portfolios evaporate. Companies that supplied railroads lose their biggest customers overnight. This triggers one of the worst depressions in American history, the Panic of 1893. People lose jobs, businesses close, banks fail. It's a total mess, and everyone's looking to the government to do something, fix it, make it better. Isn't that what governments are for? President Grover Cleveland has different ideas. He's absolutely determined to maintain the gold standard. That's his thing, his line in the sand. The US dollar is convertible to gold at a fixed rate, and that's not changing, no matter what. You got to understand the context here. Back in the 1890s, the US dollar wasn't the global currency. That was the British pound. Britain had the world's dominant economy, and the pound was what everyone used for international trade. If America wanted to be taken seriously, if it wanted to attract foreign investment and be seen as a real player on the world stage, it needed to prove its currency was solid, backed by gold, trustworthy. Cleveland believes that maintaining gold convertibility is more important than anything else, more important than helping the economy recover, more important than bailing out failed businesses, more important than unemployment or suffering. If the dollar loses its gold backing, America loses its credibility. That's his thinking, so he refuses to do expansionary fiscal policy. No tax cuts, no increased government spending, no stimulus, nothing that might threaten the gold reserves. Which would be fine except for one tiny problem. The government is running dangerously low on gold. People are panicking and converting their dollars to gold because they don't trust the currency anymore. And every day, more gold leaves the treasury. At the rate things are going, the government is maybe days away from running out completely. If that happens, the gold standard collapses, the dollar collapses, American credibility on the world stage, gone, foreign investment, gone. It would be a disaster that makes the current depression look mild. Cleveland needs help. Fast. He calls on J. Pierpont Morgan, Junius's son, the next generation of the Morgan banking dynasty. Junius died a few years earlier in a traffic accident, tragic and random, and now J.P. Morgan is running the show. And if you thought Junius was impressive, J.P. is on another level. J.P. Morgan looks at the situation and understands immediately how bad this is. The government is about to default on the gold standard. That would be catastrophic for America. And honestly, it would be pretty bad for the House of Morgan too, since their entire business model depends on America being financially stable. If the country goes down, they go down with it. But solving this problem requires gold. A lot of gold. More gold than the US government has access to. More gold than Morgan can easily acquire through normal channels. He needs someone with massive gold reserves. Someone who's been accumulating gold for decades. Someone with operations around the world who can move gold quickly. He needs the Rothschilds. For the last 30 years, while Morgan was building his American empire, the Rothschilds have been quietly investing in gold and silver mining operations all over the world, South Africa, South America. Wherever there are mines producing precious metals, the Rothschilds have been buying stakes. Their gold holdings are enormous, way bigger than any government's. And they've been using their influence to push countries toward adopting the gold standard because it makes their gold holdings more valuable. J.P. Morgan reaches out to the Rothschilds. Here's the situation. Here's what we need. Can you help? The Rothschilds look at this and see a perfect opportunity. They get to help stabilize America, which is good for their other American investments. They get to establish a relationship with the US government, which opens doors for future business, and they get paid handsomely for the service. Win-win-win. Morgan arranges to issue $65 million in government bonds. That's the funding mechanism. The government is essentially borrowing money from the public. Morgan takes those bonds and uses the money to negotiate with the Rothschilds. He buys 3.5 million ounces of gold. That's a staggering amount. We're talking tons and tons of physical gold that has to be transported across the Atlantic. Now here's why banks loved doing business with governments back then. Still do, actually. Governments are reliable borrowers. They pay back their debts because they can always collect more taxes. They're not going to go bankrupt and disappear. They might be slow payers sometimes, but they pay. That makes them low-risk, high-reward clients, the kind of customers every bank wants. The collaboration between Morgan and Rothschild on this deal creates one of the most sought-after investments anyone's seen. When the gold bonds go on sale to the public, they sell out in 30 minutes. 30 minutes. People are literally fighting to buy these bonds. The confidence in the US government backed by Morgan and Rothschild gold is that strong. The crisis gets resolved, the gold standard holds, the dollar remains convertible, American credibility stays intact. Cleveland looks like a genius for sticking to his principles, even though he basically got saved by two banking families. Morgan and the Rothschilds both make huge profits and cement their positions as the two most powerful financial institutions in the world. And America takes its place on the world stage as a legitimate economic superpower, not just a big country with potential, an actual empire, a rival to Britain, a force that will dominate the 20th century. The Rothschilds successfully expanded their business into America. They've got connections now. They've proven they can operate at the highest levels of American finance, but they're still based in Europe, still more focused on European markets than American ones. And that's going to be a problem because Europe is heading towards something that will make all previous wars look like practice runs. By the early 1900s, you can feel the tension building across Europe. It's like watching a pot about to boil over. You've got imperial rivalries. Britain wants to maintain its empire. Germany wants to build one. France wants revenge for losing to Germany. Austria-Hungary is barely holding itself together. Everyone's building up their militaries. Everyone's forming alliances. Everyone's waiting for someone else to make the first move. The Rothschilds, who've been profiting from European conflicts for a century, see this tension and think it's just another opportunity. More wars mean more financing needs, more government bonds, more currency trading. Same game they've been playing forever. They're actually advocating for military expansion in some cases. The head of the London Rothschild Bank, Natty Rothschild, is pushing for Britain to expand its naval capabilities, build more ships, maintain dominance at sea. And yeah, the Rothschilds will happily finance those ships. European countries start spending massive amounts on their militaries. Arms races accelerate. Everyone's preparing for war, and all that military spending needs to be financed. The banks, especially the Rothschilds, are there to provide the loans. It's profitable. It's what they do. It's been working for generations. What they don't realise, what nobody realises, is that the war about to unfold is going to be fundamentally different from anything that came before. The weapons are more deadly, the scale is bigger, the ideology is more extreme. This isn't going to be a limited war that ends with negotiations and border adjustments. This is going to be total war, industrial war, the kind that grinds up entire generations. June 28, 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary gets assassinated in Sarajevo. He's shot along with his wife Sophie by a Serbian nationalist, and this one assassination, this one violent act becomes the spark that ignites the whole powder keg. See, Serbia doesn't want to be ruled by Austria-Hungary. They want independence. They're their own people with their own identity, and Austria-Hungary is old, tired, imperialistic. The Serbians are done with it, so some nationalist radicals decide to make a statement. by killing the Archduke. Bold move, terrible move, but bold. Austria-Hungary blames Serbia, demands crazy concessions. Serbia refuses some of them. Austria-Hungary declares war, but Serbia has allies. Russia backs Serbia. Germany backs Austria-Hungary. France backs Russia. Britain eventually backs France. The alliance system turns one assassination into a continental war in a matter of weeks. And this war is nothing like the wars the Rothschilds have been financing. This is trench warfare, machine guns, artillery that can level entire towns, poison gas, millions of soldiers sitting in muddy trenches, getting shelled day after day, occasionally going over the top into no man's land where they get mowed down by machine gun fire. It's industrial scale slaughter. The death toll is incomprehensible. By the time it's over, about 10 million soldiers will be dead, another 7 million civilians, entire towns wiped out, whole generations lost. The maps of Europe will be redrawn, empires will fall, nothing will ever be the same. For the first time in Rothschild history, members of the family are on opposing sides. The London Rothschilds are financing Britain and its allies. The Vienna Rothschilds are in Austria-Hungary. The Frankfurt Rothschilds are in Germany. They're literally funding both sides of the same war. Family members fighting against each other through the loans they provide. This violates everything Maya Angelou taught them. Family unity above all else. Always work together, never compete, never fight. But how do you maintain family unity when your countries are trying to kill each other, when the governments you're financing are at war? There's no good answer. The family bond gets strained in ways it's never been tested before. The Rothschilds survive World War I. They even profit from it because war financing is still profitable, but their dominance is slipping. The scale of their operations is getting overshadowed by a new generation of banks, particularly by the House of Morgan in America. Morgan Bank becomes the key financier for the US government during World War I. They're raising funds through war bonds. They're extending loans to European allies. They're coordinating between American industry and military needs. J.P. Morgan's son, Jack Morgan, is running the operation now, and he's doing it bigger and better than the Rothschilds ever did. The centre of financial power is shifting from London to New York, from the old world to the new world, from the Rothschilds to Morgan. In 1935, the Jewish Chronicle, which had been following the Rothschild family for generations, basically admits what everyone can see. The Rothschilds' heyday is fading. They're still rich, still powerful, still influential, but they're not the dominant force anymore. The world has changed. Banking has changed. And the Rothschilds haven't kept up. Some of the smartest members of the younger generation are walking away from the family business entirely. They're pursuing other interests, art, science, politics, anything but banking. The drive that built the empire, that hunger that Maya Angelou had, it's not there in the same way for kids who grew up rich. You can't recreate that desperation, that need to prove yourself. That's something you either have because you started with nothing or you don't have it at all. The banking houses in different cities start pursuing their own strategies instead of working as one unified empire. The Paris Bank does its thing, the London Bank does its thing, Vienna does its own thing. They're still connected, still family, but they're not operating as one coordinated force anymore. The tight integration that made them dominant is loosening. And then the world gets even worse, way worse, because Europe's about to do the whole World War thing again, except this time it's going to be even more brutal, even more destructive, even more catastrophic for the Rothschild family personally. After World War I, Germany is humiliated and broke. They lost territory. They're paying massive reparations. The economy is destroyed. Inflation gets so bad that people are using wheelbarrows full of cash to buy bread. The suffering is real and widespread. Into this chaos steps a new kind of leader, one who understands how to harness anger, how to channel resentment, how to give people someone to blame for their suffering, and he's got particular ideas about who's responsible for Germany's problems. His rise to power is fast, shockingly fast. By 1933, he's Chancellor of Germany, and his ideology, his hatred, his plans for Europe, they spell disaster for the Rothschild family, especially the German and Austrian branches. The world is about to enter its darkest period, and the Rothschilds, who survived revolutions and wars and economic crashes for over a century, are about to face their greatest test. Just 21 years after World War I ended, Europe goes right back to doing the same damn thing, except this time the ideology is darker, the weapons are deadlier, the stakes are higher, and for Jewish families, especially prominent ones like the Rothschilds, this isn't just another war to profit from. This is existential. 1939, Germany invades Poland. Britain and France declare war. World War II officially begins, but unlike the last war, which bogged down into trench warfare pretty quickly, this one moves fast, terrifyingly fast. Spring of 1940, Hitler's military machine starts rolling and it doesn't stop. Denmark falls in hours. The entire country occupied before lunch. Norway puts up more of a fight, but it's not enough. Then the German army sweeps across the Netherlands and Belgium. These aren't long campaigns. These are blitzkrieg operations, lightning war, tanks and planes moving so fast that defending armies can't even figure out where to dig in. France is next, and France is supposed to be strong. They've got the Maginot Line, this massive defensive fortification on their border with Germany, supposedly impenetrable, except the Germans just go around it. They push through the Ardennes forest, which everyone thought was too difficult for tanks, and suddenly they're behind all of France's defences. The French army gets caught completely off guard. By June 1940, German tanks are rolling into Paris. The City of Lights goes dark. The capital of France, one of the great powers of Europe, falls, just falls, and Hitler makes sure to really rub it in. Remember when Germany got forced to sign the Treaty of Versailles in 1918? The one that humiliated them and demanded massive reparations. Hitler makes France sign their surrender in the exact same railroad car where Germany signed their surrender 22 years earlier. Maximum psychological warfare. Britain is now standing alone against Germany, the last major power in Western Europe still fighting, and they're next on Hitler's list. If Britain falls, if Hitler conquers Europe, the House of Rothschild faces its certain end. Not just financial ruin, actual extinction. The Nazis have made it very clear what they think about Jewish people. The Rothschilds, being the most prominent Jewish banking family in Europe, are a prime target. Some family members see what's coming and get out early. They flee, they grab what they can carry and run. The older Rothschilds in France, Edouard, Robert and Maurice, they manage to escape before the occupation gets too tight. They end up taking various routes, stopping in different countries, eventually making it to either the United States or England. It's chaotic. It's terrifying. These are people who've never had to run from anything in their lives. They've been at the top of European society for generations, and now they're refugees. When German tanks rolled into Paris in 1940, the French Rothschilds were in grave danger, not theoretical danger, actual, immediate, deadly danger. The Nazis aren't subtle about their intentions. They've been seizing Jewish property throughout Germany and Austria. They've been implementing increasingly brutal policies, the writings on the wall in letters 10 feet high. The Rothschilds, who can't get out, who are too old or too slow or just unlucky with timing, they face disaster. The Nazis seize everything. The banking houses get taken over. The art collections, some of the finest private collections in the world, get looted. The mansions and estates get confiscated and turned into headquarters for Nazi officials. Generations of accumulated wealth just taken, gone, stolen by a government that's decided your existence is a problem to be solved. It's not just financial loss. That's almost the easy part, if you can call losing everything easy. It's personal. These are homes where families lived for decades, art that was collected over lifetimes, buildings where business was conducted for 100 years. All of it stripped away, and the people who can't escape face worse than property loss. They face imprisonment, deportation to camps, death. Some Rothschild family members actually join resistance movements. They're not just sitting around hoping things get better. They're actively fighting back against the Nazi occupation, using their connections, their resources, whatever they have left to help the resistance efforts. It's dangerous as hell. Getting caught means execution. But they do it anyway, because what else are you going to do? Roll over and accept it. The war drags on. Britain holds. The Soviet Union enters the fight after Germany invades them, which turns out to be Hitler's biggest mistake. The United States joins after Pearl Harbor. Slowly, painfully, the tide starts to turn. The Nazis are fighting on multiple fronts. They're overextended. Their supply lines are stretched. The industrial might of America is pumping out weapons and supplies faster than Germany can keep up. D-Day, June 6, 1944. Allied forces land on the beaches of Normandy. It's brutal. The casualties are horrific, but they establish a foothold. They start pushing inland, liberating France town by town, village by village. The Nazis are being pushed back. By early 1945, it's over. Germany is being invaded from both sides. Soviet forces from the east, American and British forces from the west. Hitler kills himself in his bunker. The Nazi leadership either kills themselves or gets captured. On May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrenders. General Eisenhower makes the announcement. The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations. The flags of freedom fly all over Europe. Cities celebrate. People pour into the streets. After 6 years of war, after tens of millions of deaths, after unspeakable horrors, it's finally over. But for the Rothschild family, the victory is bittersweet. They survived, which is more than many Jewish families can say, but they've been fundamentally changed. The dynasty that operated seamlessly across Europe for over a century is now fragmented, scattered. The German and Austrian branches are essentially destroyed. The assets are gone. The banking houses are rubble. The family members who survived are traumatized. The Vienna Rothschilds, the Frankfurt Rothschilds, the branches that helped build the empire in the first place, they're not coming back, not in the same way. The wealth that took generations to build got wiped out in a few years of Nazi occupation. The London branch, N.M. Rothschild and Sons, survived because Britain held. They take on the task of rebuilding, of trying to figure out what the Rothschild name means in this new post-war world, because everything has changed. The old European order is dead. The age of empires is ending. Colonial powers are losing their colonies. New nations are forming. The global power structure is being rewritten. America and the Soviet Union emerge as the two superpowers. Everyone else is playing for third place, and the financial center of the world has definitively moved from London to New York. Wall Street is where the action is. The dollar, not the pound, is becoming the global currency. If you want to play in international finance now, you need to be tight with American banks. The London Rothschilds understand their position has shifted. They're not the dominant banking power anymore. Those days are gone. The House of Morgan, Goldman Sachs, other American institutions, they're running the show now. The Rothschilds are still rich, still influential, but they're no longer the name in banking. They're a name, one among several. That's a big psychological shift for a family that spent over a century at the very top. So they adapt. They focus on what they're still good at. Government financing, yeah, but also maintaining relationships with elite clients. The Rothschilds have always understood that access to power is as valuable as power itself. They keep their banking operations relatively small, private, exclusive. They're not trying to become a massive retail bank serving millions of customers. That's not their game. Their game is serving the ultra-wealthy and governments. High-value clients who need discretion and expertise. This becomes their core strategy going forward. Stay private, maintain control, don't chase growth for growth's sake, keep the family involved in decision-making, avoid public scrutiny as much as possible. It's a defensive posture, protect what we have, rebuild carefully, don't take unnecessary risks. By the 1970s, N.M. Rothschild and Sons is still operating in London, still serving elite clients, still making money, but they're operating in a very different banking landscape. The industry is consolidating, bigger banks are buying smaller ones, new financial instruments are being created, derivatives, options, complex structured products that didn't exist before. The rules are changing and changing fast. A guy named Robert Maxwell enters the picture, and Maxwell is complicated. He served in the British Army during World War II, which gives him credibility. After the war, he worked in British intelligence for a while. Then he got into publishing, building up a media empire. By the 1950s and 60s, he's acquiring British publishing companies, Pergamon Press, Mirror Group newspapers. He's becoming a media mogul. Maxwell's got a traumatic backstory. Most of his family was killed in the Holocaust, wiped out. That kind of loss scars you permanently. For Maxwell, the experience of extreme poverty and horror created an absolute imperative to never be poor again. Not being poor became his entire identity. Wealth wasn't just nice to have, it was survival. It was proof that he'd escaped the nightmare. But building the media empire he wants requires capital, serious capital, the kind only major banking houses can provide. And in London, if you want that kind of money with the credibility and connections attached, you go to the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds agree to back him. They provide financing for his acquisitions and expansions. On paper, Maxwell's investments look solid. Publishing is profitable. Newspapers are influential. The media industry is growing. Everything seems fine. Maxwell is seen as a successful businessman, a self-made man who overcame tragedy to build an empire. The Rothschilds are happy to be associated with that story. But underneath the surface, problems are brewing. Maxwell's empire is more leveraged than it appears. He's borrowing heavily to fund growth, using one company's credit to prop up another company, moving money around in ways that are creative at best, fraudulent at worst. But he's good at hiding it, good at maintaining the appearance of success, and as long as the cash keeps flowing, nobody looks too closely at the plumbing. Inside N.M. Rothschild and Sons, tensions are building too. Family drama, the kind that's been threatening to tear apart family businesses since the beginning of time. On one side, you've got Lord Victor Rothschild and his son Jacob. On the other side, their cousin Sir Evelyn de Rothschild. And they fundamentally disagree about the future of the bank. This is the 1980s now. The banking world is transforming. Mergers and acquisitions are everywhere. Small banks are being swallowed by bigger banks. Those bigger banks are becoming mega banks. Financial deregulation is opening up new opportunities. Derivatives and options trading are creating new revenue streams. The banks that are winning are the ones getting bigger, more aggressive, more modern. Jacob Rothschild looks at this landscape and thinks the family bank needs to adapt or die. He wants to modernize ownership structures, bring in outside capital, pursue aggressive expansion, maybe even take the bank public eventually. He sees the consolidation happening and believes the Rothschilds need to compete at that scale or they'll get left behind. They can't stay a small private bank serving elite clients while everyone else is building financial empires. The world has moved on. Sir Evelyn sees it completely differently. He's running NM Rothschild and Sons. He's the one in charge, and he believes that modernizing the ownership structure is how you lose control. The Rothschild Bank must be owned by Rothschilds, 100%. No outside investors, no dilution of family control. That's non-negotiable, even if it means short-term sacrifices, even if it means slower growth. The bank has to stay in family hands. His argument is based on history. For over 150 years, the Rothschild banks survived and thrived because the family controlled them completely. They made decisions based on long-term family interests, not quarterly earnings reports. They maintained privacy and discretion because they didn't have to answer to outside shareholders. That privacy, that discretion, that's what elite clients pay for. You start bringing in outside capital and you lose what makes you special. Both arguments make sense. Both are based on legitimate concerns about the future, but they're incompatible. You can't both modernize ownership and keep 100% family control. You have to choose, and the family can't agree on which path to take. The conflict gets personal. It always does in family businesses. It's not just about business strategy. It's about legacy, about control, about which branch of the family gets to define what the Rothschild name means going forward. These arguments have been simmering under the surface for years. Generations, really. Now they're boiling over. But family drama quickly becomes the least of their concerns because Robert Maxwell, the media mogul they've been financing, is about to create a massive scandal that will threaten their reputation in ways they haven't experienced since World War II. November 1991. The news breaks in a way that feels surreal. Robert Maxwell, millionaire newspaper publisher, is dead. He disappeared overboard from his private yacht early in the morning while cruising off the Canary Islands. Just vanished into the ocean. Gone. At first people assume it's an accident, tragic but straightforward. A guy fell off his boat at night. These things happen, but then the investigations start, and what they uncover is so much worse than anyone imagined. Maxwell had been stealing from his employees' pension funds, not skimming a little here and there, hundreds of millions. He'd been taking money that workers had saved for their retirement, money they'd earned through years of labour, and using it to prop up his failing business empire and maintain his luxurious lifestyle. The yachts, the mansions, the private jets, all of it funded partly by money that wasn't his, money that belonged to regular people who trusted their employer. When you really sit with that, it's hard to wrap your head around the scale of the betrayal. These weren't investors who knew the risks. These were employees who had their pensions automatically deducted from their paychecks. They trusted the system. They believed their retirement was safe. And Maxwell just helped himself to it like it was his personal piggy bank. The investigations intensify. Forensic accountants start digging through Maxwell's finances, and the more they dig, the worse it looks. The shell companies, the offshore accounts, the creative accounting. The whole thing was a house of cards that Maxwell had been desperately trying to keep standing by stealing from anyone and everyone he could. His death itself becomes suspicious. Did he fall? Did he jump? Was he pushed? There's a line between suicide and accident that's less clear than we like to think. Maxwell knew his empire was collapsing. He knew the investigations were closing in. He knew what was coming. Some people think he killed himself rather than face the consequences. Others think it was a genuine accident, that he was drunk or distracted and just fell overboard. A few conspiracy theories suggest he was murdered, though by who and why depends on which theory you're reading. We'll probably never know for sure. What happened on that yacht died with Maxwell, but here's what we do know. When he went into that water, whether by choice or chance, he left behind a disaster. Thousands of employees with destroyed pensions, families who'd been counting on that money for retirement suddenly facing poverty in their old age, a media empire built on fraud and questions, so many questions. For the Rothschilds, this is a nightmare. They weren't directly involved in the pension fund theft. There's no evidence they knew what Maxwell was doing, but they'd been financing him. They'd lent him money. They'd vouched for him by association. When you're in business with someone, especially as their banker, their scandals become your scandals. Their reputation problems become your reputation problems. The Rothschild name, which had survived revolutions and wars and economic crashes, gets tainted by association with a con man. People start asking uncomfortable questions. How much did the Rothschilds know? Should they have known? Were they negligent? Did they look the other way because Maxwell was profitable? The truth is probably simpler and less dramatic. Maxwell was good at fraud. He'd been doing it for years without getting caught. He maintained the appearance of success. The financial statements looked fine. The businesses seemed profitable. And the Rothschilds, like everyone else Maxwell fooled, took him at face value. But that's not a satisfying answer. People want someone to blame besides the dead guy. For Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, this whole scandal reinforces everything he's been arguing about the bank's future. This is exactly why discretion matters, why privacy matters, why you can't chase growth for growth's sake, why you need to be careful about who you do business with. Why the old ways, the conservative ways, exist for a reason. If the bank had been public, if they'd had outside shareholders demanding quarterly growth, if they'd been under constant pressure to find new clients and new deals, maybe they would have been less careful about Maxwell. Maybe they would have ignored warning signs in pursuit of profit. But as a private bank, controlled entirely by family, they can afford to be selective. They can afford to learn from mistakes without destroying shareholder value. Sir Evelyn doubles down on his vision. The bank will remain private. The bank will remain family-controlled. They'll be more cautious about clients going forward. They'll maintain the discretion that elite clients expect. They won't chase headlines or try to be the biggest bank. They'll be the most trusted bank for a certain type of client. That's the strategy. But N.M. Rothschild and Sons in London is just one piece of a much larger puzzle now. The Rothschild family has branched out in ways that would shock Mayor Amschel if he could see it. By the early 2000s, and definitely by the 2020s, the family's interests span way beyond traditional banking. Investment banking? Sure. That's still there. Managing wealth for ultra-rich clients, that's still a core business, but also private equity, buying companies, restructuring them, selling them for profit, asset management, handling investment portfolios, advisory services for mergers and acquisitions, philanthropy. The Rothschilds have foundations and charitable organizations doing work around the world. The original banking houses that Mayer Amschel's sons established, the ones in Paris, Frankfurt, Vienna, London and Naples, they've all adapted to survive. Some merged, some closed, some transformed into something barely recognizable from their origins. But the Rothschild name persists across multiple entities and businesses. In Paris, the Rothschild Bank reinvented itself after World War II. It's not the same institution James ran in the 1800s. It couldn't be. The world changed too much, but it's still operating, still serving clients, still part of the family's financial network. Frankfurt, Vienna, those branches that got destroyed by the Nazis, they never really came back in the same form. The German and Austrian Rothschilds who survived either stayed abroad or returned to find their former positions impossible to reclaim. The social and political landscape had shifted. The wealth was gone. The connections were broken. Starting over in those cities would have meant building from scratch, and the family's energy was focused elsewhere. London remained the flagship, the one with the longest continuous operation, the one that maintained the most prestige. N.M. Rothschild and Sons became the Rothschild Bank in most people's minds, even though technically there were others. The family learned something important through all these changes, through the wars and the scandals and the shifting power dynamics. Diversification isn't just smart business, it's survival. You can't put all your wealth in one industry, one country, one type of asset. The world is too unpredictable. What seems unshakable today can collapse tomorrow. What seems worthless today might be invaluable tomorrow. So the modern Rothschild empire, if you can still call it that, is spread across industries, across countries, across asset types, real estate holdings, mining interests, particularly in gold and other precious metals, agricultural investments, technology ventures, cultural institutions. The family isn't putting all their chips on banking anymore because banking alone isn't enough to guarantee long-term prosperity. This is actually a return to fundamentals in some ways. Mayer Amschel didn't just stay in one business. He pivoted from textiles to coins to banking because he followed the opportunity. He adapted to what worked. The modern family is doing the same thing. They're following opportunities wherever they appear. They're adapting to modern markets. They're not tied to the past just because that's how great-great-great-grandpa did it. But here's something that hasn't changed. The importance of information. Back in the 1800s, the Rothschilds dominated because they had the fastest communication network in Europe. They knew things before their competitors. They could act on information while others were still learning the news. That advantage made them rich. In the modern world, information moves instantly. Everyone has access to news at the same time. You can't gain an edge through carrier pigeons anymore. The internet made that obsolete. So how do you maintain an information advantage when information is everywhere? You focus on different kinds of information, not public news. Everyone has that. You focus on relationships, on insights, on understanding markets and trends before they're obvious, on knowing people who know things, on being connected to networks where information flows before it becomes public. It's a more subtle game than it used to be, but it's the same fundamental principle. Know things others don't. Act on what you know. The Rothschilds still have those networks, generations of relationships with powerful families, with governments, with institutions. That's worth more than carrier pigeons ever were. You can't download that from the internet. You can't buy access to those circles. You inherit it or you build it over decades. The Rothschilds have both. This is why elite banking still works for them, why they can charge premium fees, why clients keep coming back. It's not just about moving money. Anyone can move money now. It's about access, about discretion, about relationships, about knowing who to call when you have a problem that money can solve, but publicity would make worse. That's what you're paying for. Think about it. If you're a billionaire with a complicated problem, you don't go to a retail bank. You don't even go to most investment banks. You go somewhere that's been dealing with complicated problems for ultra-wealthy clients for over 2 centuries. Somewhere that's seen every situation before. Somewhere that knows how to keep quiet. That's the Rothschild value proposition in the modern world. Unlike your comfortable bed right now, soft and safe and yours, the Rothschilds spent generations never feeling entirely safe, always knowing their wealth could be seized, their property confiscated, their lives threatened. Even at the height of their power, there was always risk, always enemies, always people who resented their success and wanted to take it away. That insecurity, paradoxically, made them better at preserving wealth. When you know everything could disappear tomorrow, you plan differently. You diversify aggressively. You maintain multiple safe havens. You don't get complacent. Comfort breeds carelessness. Fear breeds preparation. The family today is spread across the world. Different branches in different countries, some focused on banking, some on investments, some on philanthropy, some on business ventures that have nothing to do with finance. They're not the monolithic empire they were in the 1800s. They're more like a constellation of successful families connected by a shared name and history. And honestly, that's probably healthier. The old model, where everything depended on perfect family unity, where brothers had to sacrifice for each other constantly, where family loyalty was the highest law, that's a lot of pressure. That's a recipe for resentment and conflict. The modern arrangement where different branches pursue different interests while maintaining connections, that's more sustainable, more human. Some Rothschilds still work in banking, some don't. Some are actively involved in the family businesses, some aren't. Some are famous, some live private lives far from the spotlight. They're allowed to be individuals now, not just representatives of the dynasty. That's progress, even if it means less coordination than Meyer Amschel would have wanted. The banking industry itself has transformed beyond recognition. The megabanks that emerged in the 1980s and 90s got even bigger, too big to fail, as the saying goes. When the 2008 financial crisis hit, governments had to bail out banks because letting them collapse would have taken down entire economies. That's a level of systemic importance that's both powerful and dangerous. The Rothschild banks stayed smaller, stayed private, stayed focused on their niche, and when 2008 happened, when the financial system nearly imploded, they weren't the ones needing government bailouts. They weren't the ones making headlines for risky behavior. They just quietly continued serving their clients and weathered the storm. Boring is sometimes better. Conservative is sometimes smarter. This is what Sir Evelyn understood back in the 1980s when he was fighting with his cousin Jacob, growing for growth's sake, taking on risks to compete with megabanks, losing family control. Those strategies might produce bigger numbers in the short term, but in the long term, in the really long term, like centuries long term, staying true to your core principles, maintaining control, being selective about clients and risks, that's how you survive. The Rothschild family isn't the richest family in the world anymore. They're not even close. There are tech billionaires now who have more money than the entire Rothschild family combined. The Waltons from Walmart, the Kochs from oil and chemicals, the Mars family from candy, Saudi princes, Chinese real estate tycoons. When you look at lists of the world's richest families, the Rothschilds don't even crack the top 10. But they're still here, still operating, still influential in certain circles after over 250 years through wars and revolutions and economic crashes and everything else. They're still around. How many family businesses last that long? How many family names maintain prominence for a quarter millennium? Almost none. That's the real achievement, not the peak wealth, the longevity. There's this thing that happens with wealth, especially when you inherit it rather than build it yourself. You start thinking in quarters, maybe years if you're being strategic. What's my return this year? How much did my portfolio grow? Am I beating the market? It's short-term thinking, disguised as financial planning. The Rothschilds learned to think differently. Had to, really. When Mayer Amschel was dying in 1812, he wasn't worried about next quarter's profits. He was thinking about what would still be standing in 50 years, in a century, in 200 years. That kind of long-term view, it changes everything about how you make decisions. You know what's wild? Throughout history, the Rothschild family was never shy about making money. They charged high fees. They took advantage of information asymmetries. They profited from wars that killed millions. They weren't saints. They were bankers operating in a cutthroat world where you either won or you disappeared, and they chose to win repeatedly for generations. But when it came to family legacy, when it came to keeping the name going, they were willing to let opportunities pass, take less profit, make sacrifices. That's the thing people miss about them. They weren't just greedy. If they were just greedy, they would have made different choices. They would have taken every opportunity, squeezed every advantage, and probably destroyed themselves fighting over the scraps within 2 generations. Instead, Lionel bailed out his uncle James in Paris during the 1848 revolution. Was that the smart financial move? No. It was risky as hell. The safe play was to protect the London bank and let Paris handle its own problems. But Lionel remembered his grandfather's dying words. Family unity above all else. So he took the risk. And the family survived. That happened over and over. Brothers supporting brothers, cousins helping cousins, one branch sacrificing for another, not because they were selfless, they weren't, but because they understood that keeping the family together was more valuable than any single deal. The network was worth more than individual profits. Think about modern billionaires. How many of them are setting up structures designed to keep their families wealthy for 250 years? Most are thinking about their kids, maybe their grandkids. The Rothschilds were thinking about descendants they'd never meet, people who would be born a century after they died. That's a different mentality entirely. And it requires giving up things. When you're planning for centuries, you can't always take the maximum profit today. You can't always chase the biggest opportunity. Sometimes you have to say no to deals that would make you richer right now because they'd create risks down the line. Most people aren't wired to think that way. The temptation of immediate gain is too strong. The Rothschild approach is both respected and kind of scary when you really think about it. Respected because it worked, because they're still here, still wealthy, still influential after so long, but scary because it required a level of family discipline that borders on cult-like. Individual desires subordinated to family goals, personal ambitions channeled toward collective success. That's a heavy burden to carry. The modern generation doesn't carry that burden the same way, can't really. The world's changed too much. When your options are starve in a ghetto or build a banking empire through perfect family unity, the choice is clear. When your options are maintain modest wealth with freedom or maximize wealth through rigid family hierarchy, the calculation's different. People choose freedom more often than you'd think. So the family today is looser, more flexible, different branches doing different things, some involved in traditional banking, some not, some working together closely, some barely connected. It's not the iron discipline of the early generations, but maybe that's okay. Maybe that's healthy. Rigid structures eventually break, flexible ones bend and survive. Still, there are lessons from the old ways that remain valuable. The importance of reputation, for instance. The Rothschilds always understood that your name is worth more than any single transaction. You can make a quick profit by screwing someone over, but you lose their trust forever. And trust in banking, in business, in life, that's the asset that compounds most powerfully over time. They were ruthless, but they kept their word. If a Rothschild made an agreement, they honored it, even when it hurt, even when circumstances changed and honoring the agreement became expensive, because the reputation for reliability was worth more than the cost of any individual deal. Other banks might default or renegotiate or find clever ways to weasel out of commitments. The Rothschilds just paid up and moved on. This earned them loyalty. Governments that worked with them once kept coming back. Wealthy families that trusted them with their money told other wealthy families. The business grew through reputation rather than advertising. You couldn't buy that kind of trust. You could only earn it through decades of consistent behavior. Privacy was another thing they nailed. In an age where everyone wants to be famous, where people broadcast their lives constantly, the Rothschilds understood that privacy is a luxury. The ultra-wealthy don't want attention. They want the opposite. They want to move through the world without being noticed, to make decisions without public scrutiny, to solve problems quietly. This is why private banking still exists, why there's still demand for institutions that don't publicize their client list, that don't talk about deals, that maintain absolute discretion if you're rich enough to have genuinely complicated financial situations that require creative solutions. You don't want those solutions discussed on the news. You want someone who shuts up and does their job. The Rothschilds built their reputation on shutting up, on being the black box where money goes in and problems get solved and nobody talks about it afterward. That's a dying art in modern finance, which is probably why they can still charge premium fees for it. Scarcity creates value. You're probably settling deeper into your pillows now, feeling the weight of your own day lifting as you think about all this history. Not like Mayor Amschel, who went to bed every night thinking about 5 different banking operations across Europe, wondering if his sons were following the plan, if the network was holding together, if everything would still be standing in the morning. The stress of building something that big, of coordinating across that many cities with communication that slow, it must have been crushing. Letters taking days or weeks to arrive. By the time you got a response, the situation had already changed. You're making decisions based on old information and hoping your brothers make the same call you would. That's not business, that's faith. And yet they made it work. Through the Napoleonic Wars, through revolutions, through economic crashes, the network held because each brother understood their role. Frankfurt was the home base, London was the financial powerhouse, Paris was the continental hub. Vienna and Naples were the supporting players. Everyone knew their job. Everyone did their part. Nobody tried to be the hero and grab all the glory. That takes ego management that's almost unbelievable. Think about putting 5 ambitious, competitive brothers in charge of different branches of the same business. The natural result is infighting, each one trying to prove they're better than the others, each one making decisions that benefit their branch at the expense of the whole. The whole thing should have collapsed in one generation from internal conflict. But Mayor Amschel's last lesson worked. Family unity above all else. They absorbed it, they believed it, they lived it, and when one of them was tempted to break ranks, the others pulled them back. The social pressure, the family expectations, the weight of history, it kept them aligned. Modern corporations try to replicate this with corporate culture and mission statements and team-building exercises. It never works the same way because you can't recreate the bonds of blood and shared history. You can't generate that kind of loyalty with a paycheck and stock options. Family businesses have an advantage here that can't be duplicated. When it works, it's unstoppable. When it doesn't work, it implodes spectacularly. The Rothschilds made it work for longer than almost anyone else, but even they couldn't maintain it forever. By World War I, the cracks were showing. By World War II, the structure broke. The banking houses were too independent, the family too scattered, the world too complicated for the old coordination methods. What survived was something different, not the unified empire, but a collection of related entities, not the iron discipline, but a looser network, not the 5 brothers with one vision, but dozens of descendants with dozens of visions. It's still impressive, still powerful, but it's not what Mayer Amschel built. Can't be. Time changes everything. Perhaps the most interesting thing about the Rothschild story isn't the wealth or the power. It's the choices they made about what to preserve and what to let go. They could have fought to maintain the old structure, could have insisted that every generation follow the exact same model. That way lies stagnation and eventual collapse. Instead, they adapted, loosened the reins, let the family evolve. That takes wisdom, real wisdom, understanding that the form matters less than the survival, that adapting to new realities is more important than preserving old traditions. Most family businesses fail because they can't make that distinction. They confuse tradition with survival. They hold onto the wrong things and let the important things slip away. The Rothschilds held on to reputation and relationships. They let go of absolute control and unified strategy. They kept the name and the standards. They released the rigid structure. The result is a family that's still wealthy and influential, but not in the same way. Not dominant but present. Not feared but respected. Not the biggest but enduring. There's something to be said for that approach, for knowing when to push and when to yield, for understanding that permanent dominance is impossible, but long-term survival is achievable. The latter might be less exciting, but it's more realistic, and in the end, more successful. Your warm bed is calling you deeper now. That's good. Let it. Let the weight of centuries of history, of family struggle and triumph, of fortunes made and lost and rebuilt, let it all wash over you like a wave, not like the Rothschilds who carried that weight every day, who couldn't let go even if they wanted to, who were born into expectation and responsibility that most people can't imagine. They lived with the constant knowledge that their choices would echo through generations, that their failures wouldn't just affect them, but their children and grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. That's a burden and a privilege rolled together. It drives you to excellence. Also drives you a little bit crazy. Some of them cracked under that pressure. Some walked away from the family business entirely because the expectations were too much. Some stayed but resented it. Some thrived. People aren't uniform. Even in families with strong cultures, individuals react differently to the same pressures. The ones who stayed, who took on the family mantle, they had to believe in it, had to believe that maintaining the legacy was worth the sacrifice, worth the stress, worth subordinating their individual desires to family goals. That belief, that commitment, it's what made the whole thing possible. Without it, the empire crumbles. With it, you get 250 years of influence and wealth. But also, and this matters, you get 250 years of being a target, of people hating you for your success, of conspiracy theories and accusations and resentment. The Rothschilds have been blamed for everything from starting wars to controlling governments to orchestrating economic crashes. Most of it is nonsense. Some of it has grains of truth wrapped in layers of exaggeration. All of it comes with being that visible, that wealthy, that powerful. Privacy helps, but it doesn't eliminate the problem. People fill in the gaps in their knowledge with imagination and suspicion. The less they know about you, the more they assume, and they usually assume the worst. That's human nature. We're suspicious of power we can't see or understand. The Rothschilds dealt with this by ignoring most of it. You can't respond to every conspiracy theory, can't defend yourself against every accusation. You just keep doing your work, serving your clients, building your businesses. Let your reputation speak for itself. Let the results speak for themselves. The people who matter, the clients with money, they know the truth. The conspiracy theorists don't matter because they were never going to be clients anyway. That's a cold calculation, but probably the right one. Engaging with critics gives them legitimacy. Ignoring them denies them the confrontation they want. It's not always satisfying. Sometimes you want to fight back, set the record straight, defend your name. But strategically, silence is often smarter. The family learned that through experience, through watching what happened when they engaged publicly versus when they stayed quiet. Quiet worked better. Privacy worked better. Let people speculate. Let them wonder. Let them make up stories. As long as your actual clients trust you, as long as your actual business succeeds, the noise doesn't matter. This philosophy extends to how they teach the next generation. The kids growing up in Rothschild families today, they're taught differently than Mayer Amschel's sons were. Less pressure, more options. They can join the family business or do something else. They can be involved or step away. The expectation of perfect family unity is gone. What remains is education about responsibility, about stewardship, about understanding that wealth brings obligations, that being born into privilege means you have duties, not to your family necessarily, but to society, to the world, to leaving things better than you found them. That's the modern version of family unity, not working together in lockstep, but sharing values and commitments. Some people call that a cop-out, a weakening of family bonds. Maybe. Or maybe it's an evolution, an adaptation to a world where individuals have more choices than they used to, where family loyalty competes with personal fulfillment in ways it didn't before. The Rothschilds adapted to survive. This is just the latest adaptation. By 2023, the Rothschild family has diversified so far beyond traditional banking that Mayer Amschel probably wouldn't recognize what they do anymore. Investment banking, sure. Wealth management, okay. But also private equity firms buying and selling companies. Asset management, handling massive portfolios. Advisory services for mergers and acquisitions. Philanthropic foundations doing humanitarian work, wine estates, mining operations, real estate holdings. It's not one thing anymore. It's dozens of things. The original vision, 5 brothers in 5 cities, all working together as one coordinated unit, that's ancient history. The modern reality is more like a large extended family, where some members work together sometimes. They share a name, they share some history. They might collaborate on certain deals, but they're not operating as one empire under unified leadership. Nobody's playing the role Mayer Amschel did, coordinating everything. Nobody could, even if they wanted to. The family's too big. The interests too diverse. And maybe that's fine. Maybe that's healthier. The old model required sacrifices that seem unreasonable by modern standards. Your whole life dedicated to the family business. Your marriage arranged for strategic alliances. Your location determined by family needs rather than personal preferences, individual dreams subordinated to collective goals. That worked when survival was at stake, when it was cooperate perfectly or lose everything. But once you've made it, once survival is assured, why live that way? The modern Rothschilds can choose their own paths. Some go into finance because they genuinely want to. They're interested in it. It excites them. Others do completely different things. Art, academia, technology, whatever interests them. The family name opens doors, but doesn't dictate life choices anymore. That's probably progress, even if it means less coordination. What's interesting is what survived the transition from empire to loose network. The emphasis on education survived. Rothschild kids still get the best education money can buy. Not just formal schooling, education about how money works, how power works, how to carry themselves in elite circles, how to maintain relationships across generations. That stuff gets passed down. The importance of discretion survived. Modern Rothschilds generally don't seek publicity, don't go on reality TV or try to become influencers or post their lives on social media for everyone to see. They understand that privacy is valuable, that not everything needs to be public. That's becoming rare in a world where everyone broadcasts everything. The long-term perspective survived in some branches. Not everyone thinks in generations anymore, but some do. Some still make decisions based on what will be standing in 50 years rather than what maximizes profit this quarter. That's gotten harder as capitalism has shifted toward short-term thinking, but it hasn't disappeared entirely. What died was the absolute commitment to family unity above all else. That was always going to die eventually. It required conditions that don't exist anymore. The external pressure of being outsiders, being restricted, having to band together because nobody else would help you. Once you're accepted, once you're established, once you're safe, that pressure disappears. And without the pressure, the unity weakens. Natural, inevitable, kind of sad, but also kind of liberating. The other thing that died was the centralized control of information. That was the Rothschilds' secret weapon for a century. They knew things first. They could act on information while others were still learning about it. The telegraph weakened that advantage. The telephone weakened it more. The internet killed it completely. Now everyone has access to the same information at the same time. The playing field leveled. The Rothschilds lost their edge. So they had to find new edges, new ways to add value, and they did through relationships and expertise and reputation, but it's a different game now, less about speed and information, more about insight and access. The fundamentals changed, they adapted, but they're not dominant the way they were. Can't be. The world doesn't allow for that kind of dominance anymore. Compare them to modern billionaires, the tech founders, the guys who built Amazon or Facebook or Tesla. Those guys have wealth that would make even peak Rothschilds jealous. We're talking hundreds of billions for individuals, not families, individuals. That's a level of personal wealth the Rothschilds never achieved, even at their height. But here's the thing. How many of those tech fortunes will last 250 years? How many will survive 3 or 4 generations? Most family wealth disappears within 3 generations. That's just statistics. First generation builds it. Second generation maintains it. Third generation spends it. Gone. Very few families break that pattern. The Rothschilds broke it. They're on like their 7th or 8th generation and still wealthy, still influential. That's genuinely rare. It's not about having the most money right now. It's about having money continuously over centuries, about building structures that outlast individuals, about creating systems that survive market crashes and wars and revolutions and everything else that destroys most fortunes. That's the real Rothschild achievement, not the peak, the duration. Think about what they survived. Napoleonic wars, multiple revolutions across Europe, World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, and the Holocaust, the Cold War, multiple economic crises, countless smaller disasters. Any one of those events destroyed most families. The Rothschilds navigated all of them. Not always gracefully, not without losses, but they navigated them. That required more than intelligence or ruthlessness or luck, though they needed all of those. It required something harder to define, a flexibility combined with stubbornness, willing to adapt tactics while maintaining core principles, willing to sacrifice profit for survival. willing to think in time frames that make most people uncomfortable. Your bed is holding you gently now, isn't it? The sheets soft against your skin, the pillow supporting your head perfectly, the blanket just the right weight. You're safe, comfortable, not worrying about revolution or war or economic collapse, not lying awake calculating how to move gold across continents or whether your banking house in another city is following the plan. The Rothschilds spent generations never feeling entirely safe, even at their peak, even with all the money and power, because they understood how quickly things could change, how fast wealth could disappear, how easily you could lose everything. That kept them sharp, kept them cautious, kept them preparing for disasters that might never come. Sometimes those disasters did come, and they were prepared. That's why they survived. The families that felt safe, that got complacent, that stopped preparing for the worst, those families are gone now. Nobody remembers their names. The Rothschilds are still here, partly because they never stopped being a little bit afraid, never stopped planning for catastrophe. There's a lesson there about paranoia and survival, about how the right amount of fear keeps you alert, keeps you adaptable. Too much fear paralyzes you. Too little fear makes you reckless. The Rothschilds found the balance, or maybe they just got lucky. Hard to say from this distance. Probably both. What would Mayer Amschel think if he could see the family now? Would he be proud, disappointed? Probably both, honestly. Proud that the name survived, that his descendants are still wealthy and influential, that his vision of a lasting legacy came true beyond anything he could have imagined. But also maybe disappointed that the unity dissolved, that the empire fragmented, that his grandchildren's grandchildren don't work together the way his sons did, that the iron discipline he demanded became flexible over time. He'd understand why it happened. He was smart enough to see how the world was changing, but understanding doesn't mean approving. Then again, he might be pleasantly surprised by how long the family stayed together. Most don't make it past the second generation working together. The Rothschilds maintained serious collaboration for 3 or 4 generations. That's extraordinary. That's longer than almost anyone manages. So maybe he'd focus on that, on what worked rather than what eventually broke. The family's influence today is subtle. They're not making headlines, not dominating markets, not financing wars or toppling governments. They're operating in the background, managing wealth, advising clients, maintaining relationships, making investments, doing business the way business has always been done in elite circles, quietly, effectively, without drama. That might be the truest victory, not being the biggest or most powerful, but being sustainable, being able to continue doing what you do generation after generation without burning out or imploding or getting destroyed by external forces. Most families, most businesses, most empires fail at that. The Rothschilds succeeded, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. You can feel yourself drifting now, the story winding down, the history fading into memory, all those names and dates and deals, they're becoming distant, less sharp, less urgent, just a long tale of one family's journey through centuries of chaos, rising from nothing, reaching incredible heights, facing disasters, adapting, surviving, continuing. In the end, what's the point of the Rothschild story? What are we supposed to take from it? Maybe it's about the difference between wealth and legacy. Lots of people get rich. Fewer people build something that lasts. Even fewer build something that survives them by centuries. The Rothschilds did that. Not through luck, through deliberate choices about what mattered and what didn't. Family unity mattered until it didn't. Then adaptation mattered, information mattered until it didn't. Then relationships mattered, power mattered until it didn't. Then discretion mattered, the ability to read the changing environment and shift strategies. That's what allowed them to persist. They weren't static, weren't rigid, weren't tied to one approach forever. They changed with the times while maintaining certain core values. Reputation, reliability, long-term thinking, those stayed constant while everything else evolved. That's the trick. Know what to change and what to keep. Most people get that wrong. The Rothschilds got it right more often than not. Your breathing is slower now, deeper. The weight of your body pressing into the mattress, the warmth of your blanket, the darkness of your room, all of it pulling you towards sleep, toward rest, toward letting go of the day and all its thoughts and worries. The Rothschilds worked for centuries to build their legacy. You don't have to build anything right now. You just have to rest. Let your mind quiet. Let the story fade. Let sleep come naturally. You're safe, comfortable, in your own bed, with nothing to prove and nothing to protect. Just rest. Just peace. Just the gentle drift into dreams.